Hi everyone, I'm an intuitive guide, a well-being coach, and a corporate trainer. Today I wanted to talk about another of our case studies about past life regression therapy, and this was to do with someone who was dealing with issues with anger. And this was a different case from the usual because there were multiple layers to this. So the person that had come to us wanted to talk about anger and certain difficulties in terms of self-confidence. Now, usually, if one were to meet the person is very, very well qualified, is a medical expert, as well as has been working in the field for many, many years. And the issue had come up a couple of years back and had become intense in the last 3-4 years. So the person was unable, the client, when they came to me, they did not know what the issue was or what they were feeling. They just knew that there was a lot of anger, or that might have been resentment that came up every time they would meet someone, particular people, or they would come back home. So there were instances that they shared that they thought were creating the anger, but they were not sure who or what exactly was creating that anger. And the other thing that seemed to be closely linked to it was the fact that they would suddenly feel incapable of handling a certain situation, or they would feel that they did not have enough experience or enough qualification. And whereas, of course, the educational qualification and experience says something else. So sometimes, before I get into the details of the case, I want to share that sometimes it does happen despite that we have perhaps worked in a particular field, or we have worked in a particular sector or industry. We might just start feeling a sense of lack of self-confidence. Some of us might call it that. Some of us might call it that I'm not sure about myself anymore. Or some of us might, question ourselves that I'm not sure what I'm doing is right, or do I need to do something else. Now, a lot of these doubts might come in different ways. And typically, if somebody has many years of experience, they would not address it, or they would not share it with anybody. Now, that is, of course, becomes the issue, because if you do not share it with someone, how do you cope with it? Because clearly, self-coping has not been happening, or is not as effective. And when we are unable to do that, when we are unable to use our usual coping skills or coping mechanisms to deal with the situation, and they're not working, then we might feel even more uncertain, and which is just aggravates the problem even more, because if there are doubts and self-doubts about one's skills or experience, and you're unable to do something about it, it just multiplies that in a negative way even more. And the other thing that I mentioned was the anger. Now, many people have been coming to me with anger. Now, when I look at people who are much younger, in the early 20s, there is a lot of anger that they might be feeling. People with, say, 23 years to 26 years or 27 years. Now, they would have a certain anger which would be, they've worked in the corporate, or they have worked, they've started their career, have a couple of years of experience, but still there is a very unsettling anger that keeps coming up, or a frustration is how they usually would talk about it. The next set of anger that comes up is also with people who have been married for a few years, and that could be people who are married for about 10 years or perhaps more. And sometimes the anger would also be people with women who are in their early or mid 40s, and then again it'll reappear around the early or mid 50s. And with men, though they may not feel the anger as much, or they may not acknowledge the anger, a lot of the men in their 50s are in their mid 40s and 50s. Once they are able to, they feel that they have been able to do something about their career, they start, what happens next, what is there to do next. Now, again, one would usually go to your coping mechanisms, or you would go use strategies that worked for you in the past. That could be playing sports, that could be playing doing some of your favorite arts. You could be artists, it could be playing an instrument, it could be going out with friends. So those usual mechanisms or coping mechanisms don't end up working, and it takes a long time before somebody accepts it and actually reaches out for help. And initially they might reach out for help saying that, oh, I've been having this headache for many months now, nothing is working, I'm taking medication, it's not working. Or somebody might say, I've been having a neck ache for a long time or a backache for a long time. But one is not getting into the reason for these neck aches and pains that are manifesting in the physical body. And many a time these aches and pains are related to either anger or resentment. There are other emotions, of course, that cause certain kind of pains in the body, but usually when there is pain, a headache or a neck ache or a shoulder ache or a backache, it is related to anger or resentment. The reason I'm sharing this is because it is important to be aware that some of the aches and pains that or some of you might be feeling, or someone might be feeling, there could be a different cause to it. Now, coming back to my client, so when I started working with the client, we set up a session where there were 3 sessions that were set up with the person, and the first 2 sessions were essentially releasing a negative energy from the body and relaxing, because the person was having difficulty in sleeping and had been, there was a lack of sleep and sometimes disturbing sleep. So just to make sure that at least the client was able to get some sleep and get rest, physical rest, we did the first 2 sessions, and then between the first and the second session and the second and the third session, there were exercises that were given to the client. Now, once the client was open enough to really work on themselves and was open enough to address the main issue that was coming up, because when we start doing that, one also needs to be open-minded and open-hearted to whatever comes up. So with this, what I did was, with this particular client, I used not just past life regression therapy, I used a particular relaxation technique. And this was an online session. I do multiple online sessions with clients across the world, and in America and Australia, I work with many of them with online sessions. Now, so we started the third session. We started with a bit of a special relaxation technique, and then I took her through a deeper mode of relaxation, which is progressive relaxation in hypnotherapy. And then we tried to identify, we went deeper into a particular memory that might be coming out. And as we were after the relaxation and progressive relaxation, I was using a technique to release the negative emotions, to release the anger, and to release any sort of resentment that would be there in the client's physical body. And as we did that, what happened was there was a memory that came to the client's mind that was that seemed not connected with the issue. And it does happen many times when you are doing a past life regression therapy or a hypnotherapy or inner child work, or any of the therapies that I work on, including EFT and other intuitive techniques. What happens, the client sometimes feels, there would be a memory that would be coming to their mind, but they feel this isn't related to what the issue is. My issue is anger. Why would this memory come? Because I have already dealt with it. This was not really an issue, or I don't think I have a problem here. So as a therapist, what I have to do is that I have to realize by looking at the closed eyes of the person, the pupils below the closed eyes. I have to look at the body movements of the person, and it is possible in an online session as well, because the way that it is a video call and the way that we place it, and because I intuitively connect to my clients, I'm able to gauge what that is. And so I knew that couple of I think 10, 20, 30 minutes into the session, I knew that there were memories that were coming up and there was resistance from the client. What I did then is that then I worked through that, because as a therapist I have to make sure that that the client is suspending their left brain and they are not using the logical mind to filter out anything or to filter out any memories, because if a memory is coming, there is a reason for that. So I worked with that. So I gave certain suggestions, direct suggestions, and because I was intuitively connected to the client, I could sense some parts of those memories. And so so I took the client through that process, and then I basically used techniques to bring out that emotion from the clients. So when the client started speaking more in detail, that's when I knew that there was something that was coming up. And so there were memories that came up that were related to about 15 years back, 15 to 18 years back. And the client was no longer in touch with that person, and there was a suicide that had happened through one of the common friends, and so the client was very surprised that I had nothing to do. I didn't really know the person who had committed suicide. It was the relative of a friend of mine who I'm not even in touch with. So you can see how the filtration process of the mind was working for the client. And then because I was intuitively connected, so I knew, I understood what was happening. So I used techniques to release whatever was there. So I released the doubts that were coming up. I released any kind of connection that were coming up. And then it took us about another 15-20 minutes to let go. And then after those memories were released, I worked on the healing process. So there is a certain healing process that you work with the client, and then towards the end I did cord cutting with the client. So where the client cuts cords, any connections, any memories that are creating a negative impact on the client, you cut those memory cords with other people that is not serving you. So that was the entire process, and it has been about a month, and the person has seen an enormous amount of change. Within a couple of days, the person, when they went back to the office, they did not feel the same kind of uncertainty or doubt. There was absolutely no anger, no resentment when they came across people. When they came back home, that anger was gone. So past life regression therapy, or some of the therapies that I worked with, because it is a combination of therapies, it works very quickly. As long as one is open to accepting that, and one is open to healing. So let me know what you think about this. If you want me to make any other videos and talk about any other case studies, I'll be happy to do that. And till next time, I will see you on our Facebook or Instagram or on our YouTube channel. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.